Those were the first words Daniel Cross spoke to me. Not a proposal, but a transaction. I was dying in a snowstorm with nowhere left to run. He was a widower with two terrified sons and a ranch crumbling under debt. We were strangers bound by desperation, not love. What I didn't know then was that accepting his offer would drag me into a battle I never saw coming, one that would cost blood, test every ounce of courage I had, and force me to become someone I didn't recognize. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you want to know how a city teacher became a rancher's wife, survived an outlaw raid, and built a family from ashes, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the night everything changed. The wagon hit another rut, and I bit down hard to keep from crying out. Pain shot through my ribs, the ones Hank Morrison's boot had cracked 3 weeks ago when I refused to leave town quietly. My vision blurred. The cold had stopped hurting an hour back, which I knew meant I was dying. That's what Montana winters do. They don't kill you loud. They just pull you under, quiet and patient. Miss? Miss, you still breathing back there? The driver's voice seemed to come from underwater. I forced my eyes open. The tarp covering the wagon bed flapped in the wind, and through the gap I could see nothing but white. Snow. Endless, suffocating white. Yeah, I croaked. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Ranch is just over the ridge. Hang on. Hang on. As if I had a choice. As if I hadn't been hanging on by my fingernails for months, watching everything I'd built in Cedar Falls collapse like a house of cards. The teaching position I'd fought for. The respect I'd earned. The life I'd carved out in a town that hated outsiders. All of it gone because I'd made the mistake of telling the mayor's son he couldn't graduate without learning to read. The wagon lurched to a stop. Voices outside. Men's voices. Sharp and impatient. She dying, Pete? Might be. Picked her up at the station. Said she was answering some mail order ad, but hell if I know. Woman's half frozen. Daniel's gonna love this. Rough laughter. Then the tarp yanked back and freezing air slammed into me like a fist. Hands grabbed my arms. Not gentle, but not cruel either. Working hands. Ranch hands. Easy now. Let's get you inside before you turn into a corpse on us. They half carried, half dragged me toward a house that materialized out of the blizzard like a ghost. 2 stories, dark wood, no lights in the windows. It looked as cold and unwelcoming as the land around it. The door opened before we reached it. What the hell is this? The voice stopped me cold, or would have if I wasn't already frozen, deep, controlled, absolutely devoid of warmth. Mail order bride, boss, at least that's what Pete says. I didn't order a damn bride. Well, she's here anyway, and she's dying. You want her death on the porch, or you want to let us bring her in? A pause, long enough that I thought he might actually say no. Then, get her inside, not the main house, the foreman's cabin, and someone find Doc Preston. Doc's 3 hours away in this storm, then she better be tough. I tried to protest, tried to say I could walk, but my legs had other ideas. They buckled, and suddenly I was weightless, being carried up steps and through a doorway into a room that wasn't much warmer than outside. They set me down on something hard, a chair maybe, and I heard boots retreating, a door closing. Then silence. I don't know how long I sat there, shaking so hard my teeth rattled, long enough for sensation to creep back into my fingers. Burning, stabbing sensation that made me want to scream. I pressed my hands between my knees and focused on breathing. In, out, in, out. The door opened again. I looked up, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. Daniel Cross was not a handsome man, not in the way the dime novels painted Western ranchers. He was tall, yes, and broad-shouldered, but there was nothing romantic about him. His face was all hard angles and sun-carved lines, his eyes the color of winter sky. He wore his grief like a second skin, visible in every rigid muscle, every careful movement. This was a man who'd forgotten how to bend. He stood in the doorway holding a blanket and a tin cup, studying me like I was a broken piece of equipment he hadn't ordered. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "Neither are you. I didn't place an ad for a wife. I didn't answer one." His eyebrows went up a fraction. "Then what the hell are you doing on my ranch in the middle of a blizzard?" Good question. The truth was complicated, too complicated for a man who looked like he had no patience for complications. but I was too tired and too cold to lie. I heard in town that you might need help, a housekeeper, someone to watch your boys. I'm a teacher, was a teacher. I can cook, clean, manage a household. I stopped, swallowed. I thought maybe you'd give me work. And you came out here in a blizzard without confirming first? I didn't have anywhere else to go. The words hung in the air between us. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Not sympathy. Sympathy required warmth, and this man had none to spare. But recognition, maybe. The understanding of one desperate person looking at another. He stepped inside, closed the door, set the blanket and cup on the table beside me. Drink that. It's coffee, more or less. I wrapped my shaking hands around the cup. The liquid inside was black as tar, and probably strong enough to strip paint, but it was hot. I drank it anyway. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. Not close. He maintained a careful distance, like I might be contagious. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost gentle, though I suspected gentleness didn't come naturally to him. What's your name? Grace Callahan. Where are you from, Grace Callahan? Philadelphia. Originally. Long way from home. I don't have a home anymore. He studied me for a long moment. I knew what he was seeing, a woman past her prime by frontier standards, thin as a rail, with a bruised face and desperate eyes. Not exactly a prize catch. Not the kind of woman men rode away for. What happened to your face? I touched my cheekbone without thinking. The bruise there had faded from purple to yellow-green, but it was still visible. Still a reminder. I made some people angry. People or a person? Does it matter? Might, if he's coming after you. I shook my head. He's not. He got what he wanted. Me out of town. That's all. Daniel didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Instead, he stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the white nothing beyond the glass. When he spoke again, his back was to me. My wife died 8 months ago, cholera. She was pregnant with our third. The words were delivered without emotion, like he was reading from a ledger, but I heard the weight behind them anyway. I'm sorry, I said, because what else could I say? Don't be. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand the situation here. He turned to face me. I've got 2 sons. Noah's 8, Lucas is 4. This ranch is all they have, all they'll ever have. And I'm about to lose it. Why? Bank wants payment on a loan my wife took out before she died. I didn't know about it until after. She was trying to expand the herd, invest in better breeding stock. It was a good plan, would have paid off in a few years, but she died before it could. His jaw tightened. The bank doesn't care about long-term plans. They want their money in 30 days, or they take the land. I waited. There was more coming. I could feel it. I've got most of what they want, he continued. Sold off stock, let go of hands I can't afford. But I'm still short. About $1,000 short. $1,000. A fortune. I had maybe $20 to my name, and that was only because I'd sold everything I owned before leaving Cedar Falls. I don't understand what this has to do with me, I said. My wife had a sister back east, Margaret. Never met her, but Elizabeth talked about her sometimes. After Elizabeth died, I wrote to Margaret, told her about the boys, the ranch, the situation. Figured she might want to know. He paused, and I saw something flicker across his face. Distaste, maybe. Or shame. Margaret wrote back, said she'd pay off the loan on one condition, that I remarry within the year. Someone to raise her sister's boys properly. Someone to make sure this ranch doesn't fall apart. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She doesn't trust me to do it alone. And maybe she's right not to. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. You need a wife, I said slowly. I need a wife on paper. Someone Margaret will approve of when she visits to inspect the situation. Someone who can keep house, raise the boys, maintain appearances. He crossed his arms. In exchange, you get room, board, safety, a place to stay, legal protection of my name. But not a real marriage. No, not real. Separate rooms, no expectations. He said the last word carefully, like it might explode. Just an arrangement, business. I should have been insulted. Any woman with pride would have been. But pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore, and we both knew it. What happens if it doesn't work? I asked. If Margaret doesn't approve, or if, then you leave. I give you enough money for passage somewhere else, and we part ways, no harm done. And if it does work, then you stay, as long as you want, or as long as the arrangement suits us both. He uncrossed his arms, and for the first time I saw uncertainty in his face. I'm not a good man, Miss Callahan. I'm not kind. I'm not patient, and I sure as hell am not easy to live with. But I keep my word. You'll be safe here. You'll be fed, clothed, protected. The boys need someone. He stopped, cleared his throat. They need someone who isn't me. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. I thought about the wagon ride here, about the cold that had nearly killed me. I thought about Cedar Falls and the hatred in Hank Morrison's eyes when he'd kicked me. I thought about the long string of towns before that, each one smaller and meaner than the last, each one rejecting me for reasons I couldn't control. I thought about dying alone in the snow. When? I asked. Daniel blinked. When what? When do you need an answer? Now, tonight. Margaret's lawyer arrives tomorrow to verify the marriage before releasing the funds. If you say no, I'll have to find someone else by dawn, and he stopped himself. There isn't anyone else. You're it. That's not much of a choice. No, he agreed. It's not. I looked down at my hands. They'd stopped shaking. The coffee had brought some color back to my fingers, some feeling to my limbs. I wasn't dying anymore. Not immediately, anyway. But I would be if I walked away from this. What about the boys? I asked. Do they know? They know I need to remarry. They don't know about you specifically. Will they accept me? Does it matter? They're children. They'll do what they're told. The casual coldness of the statement made me look up sharply. Daniel met my gaze without flinching. They lost their mother, I said. They're grieving. You can't just install a replacement and expect them to adjust. I'm not expecting anything. I'm surviving. There's a difference. And what happens when surviving isn't enough? Then we'll figure it out. Or we won't. He pulled out a pocket watch, checked the time. I need an answer, Miss Callahan. The Reverend's waiting in the main house. We do this now, or we don't do it at all. Now. Tonight. In a cabin on the edge of nowhere with a man I'd known for less than an hour. Every rational part of my brain screamed no. Screamed that this was insane, that I should take my chances with the storm, with the road, with anything except this. But the rational parts of my brain hadn't kept me alive this long. If I say yes, I said slowly, I need your word on something. What? The boys. I need freedom to work with them my way. I'm a teacher. I know how to reach children, but I can't do it if you're undermining me at every turn. He frowned. You'll have authority in the house. I already said that. I need more than authority. I need trust. If they're going to accept me, they need to see you accepting me first. I'm marrying you. That's acceptance. No, that's a transaction. I stood up, ignoring the protest from my ribs. I'm not asking you to love me, Mr. Cross. I'm not asking you to even like me. But in front of those boys, you treat me like I matter, like I belong here. Can you do that? He stared at me for a long moment. I could see him calculating, weighing the cost against the benefit. Finally, he gave a single, sharp nod. Fine. In front of the boys, we're a united front. Behind closed doors, we're strangers. Deal? I extended my hand. Deal. His hand swallowed mine, calloused, strong, warm, despite the cold in the room. We shook once, formally, like we were sealing a business contract, which I supposed we were. Get warmed up, Daniel said, releasing my hand and heading for the door. I'll send someone with clean clothes. We'll do this in an hour. Wait. He paused, hand on the doorknob. What do I call you? I asked. After. He looked back at me, and for just a second I saw something raw in his face. Something that looked almost like grief. Daniel's fine. I've never been much for formality. And should I tell the boys to call me something specific? Call yourself whatever you want. They'll decide what to call you on their own. He opened the door, and cold air rushed in. One more thing, Miss Callahan. Grace, if we're doing this, you should call me Grace. Grace, then. He nodded. Welcome to Cross Ranch. Try not to die in the next hour. It'd be inconvenient. The door closed behind him before I could respond. I sank back into the chair, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. What had I just agreed to? Marriage to a stranger, stepmother to 2 grieving boys, life on a failing ranch in the middle of Montana winter. But the alternative was freezing to death in a wagon bed, or crawling back to civilization with nothing and no one. At least here, I had a chance. The door opened again. Not Daniel this time, but a woman. Older, Mexican, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She carried an armful of fabric. "Señora," she said, and her accent was thick but her English clear. "I am Rosa. I cook, I clean, I keep this place from falling apart. You are the new wife, yes?" Yes, I suppose I am." "Bueno, you need dress for wedding. This was Señora Elizabeth's. She was taller, but we make it work." She shook out the dress. Simple navy wool, practical and well made. Not a wedding dress by any stretch, but then this wasn't that kind of wedding. "Thank you," I said. Rosa studied me with sharp eyes. "You know what you're doing, yes? Coming here?" "No," I admitted. "Not really." To my surprise, she smiled. "Good. If you knew, you would run. Sometimes it is better not to know." She set the dress on the table, then pulled a small bottle from her apron pocket. "For the ribs. I see how you breathe. This will help with pain." "How did you—" "I have eyes, Señora, and I know what hurt looks like." She pressed the bottle into my hands. "Rub on the bruises. Not too much, or you smell like horse liniment at your wedding. Just enough." I almost laughed. "Almost. Rosa," I said as she turned to leave, "the boys, what are they like?" Her expression shifted, softened, and saddened at the same time. "Noah? He is old before his time. Takes care of Pequeño Lucas like a little father. Lucas, he still believes his mama will come back. He waits by the window sometimes." My throat tightened. "And Danielle?" "Señor Cross is a good man beneath the stone, but the stone is very thick now." She paused at the door. "You will need patience, Señora. Much patience, and also, I think, much strength." "I don't know if I have either." "Then you will find them. Or you will break," Rosa shrugged. "But breaking is not so bad. Sometimes things must break before they can heal." She left me alone with that thought, in a dress that smelled like lavender and loss. An hour later, I stood in the main house's front room, wearing a dead woman's dress, and facing a reverend who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Daniel stood beside me, cleaned up but still radiating the same controlled tension. He wore a black suit that had seen better days, and his jaw was freshly shaved. He didn't look at me. Behind us, arranged like witnesses at a trial, stood the ranch hands, 3 men I hadn't met, and Rosa, who'd insisted on being present. "Someone must see this," she'd said firmly. "Or later, you will say it did not happen." The Reverend cleared his throat. "We are gathered here tonight." "Skip to the vows," Daniel interrupted. "We don't need the sermon." The Reverend's mouth pinched, but he nodded. "Very well. Daniel Cross, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold?" "I do." "From this day forward, in sickness and in health?" "I said I do." The Reverend's face reddened. "Let me finish, please. For sickness and health, for richer or poorer, yes. All of it. I do." A pause. Then the Reverend turned to me, and I saw sympathy in his eyes. "Poor woman," his expression said. "Marrying this ice block of a man. Grace Callahan, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked at Daniel, really looked at him, saw the rigid set of his shoulders, the careful way he held himself separate from me, saw a man drowning and refusing to ask for help, saw myself reflected in that same drowning. "I do," I said. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you man and wife." The Reverend snapped his book shut. "You may kiss the bride." "That won't be necessary," Daniel said. "It's tradition." "I don't care about tradition. Is it legal without the kiss?" "Well, yes, but—" "Then we're done. Rosa, get the witness papers ready." Daniel turned to me for the first time since the ceremony started. "You should meet the boys. They're upstairs." Just like that. No kiss, no celebration, no acknowledgement that anything significant had just happened. Just on to the next task. I followed him up a narrow staircase, my borrowed dress rustling. The second floor was darker than the first, lit only by a single lamp. Daniel stopped at a closed door. "They're in here," he said quietly. "Noah knows you're coming. Lucas doesn't really understand." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That I'm remarrying so we can keep the ranch. That you'll be living here now." "That's all? What else is there?" I didn't answer. What else was there, really? Lies would only make it harder later. Daniel opened the door. The room was small but neat. 2 beds on opposite walls, a shared dresser, toys tucked into a corner. And in the far bed, 2 shapes huddled together under a quilt. The older boy, Noah, sat up immediately. He had his father's eyes, but where Daniel's were frozen over, Noah's burned with something fierce and protective. He held his little brother against his chest like a shield. "Papa?" His voice was wary. "Noah, Lucas, this is Grace. We got married tonight. She'll be staying with us." Lucas, the little one, peeked out from behind Noah's shoulder. He had soft brown hair and huge eyes, and he looked so small and fragile that my chest ached. "Where's Mama?" Lucas asked. The question dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Lucas, we talked about this. Mama's not coming back." "But you said we'd get a new mama if we were good." "I said we'd have help in the house. That's all." "Is she Mama now?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "She's Grace, just Grace." Noah's eyes never left my face. "Why did you marry her if she's not going to be our mother?" "That's not your concern." "Everything about this family is my concern." The words burst out of Noah with surprising force. "You don't tell us anything. Mama died and you just locked yourself in the barn for a week. And then you said we had to sell the horses. And now you bring home some stranger and say we're supposed to... To what? Pretend everything's fine?" "Noah, I hate you." Noah's voice cracked. "I hate this place. I hate that Mama's gone and you won't even talk about her. And I hate her." He jabbed a finger at me. "She's not Mama and she never will be." Lucas started to cry. Soft, hiccuping sobs that broke my heart. Daniel stood frozen, his face a mask. I could see him trying to figure out what to do, what to say, failing. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I sat down on the floor right there in the doorway. Not approaching, not threatening their space, just sitting. "You're right," I said to Noah. He blinked, surprised. "What?" "You're right. I'm not your mama. I never will be. No one can replace her." "Then why are you here?" "Because your father needed help, and I needed a place to stay. That's all. I'm not trying to be your mother. I'm just here." "We don't need you," Noah said, but there was less heat in it now. "Maybe not, but I need you." "That doesn't make sense, doesn't it?" I looked at Lucas, who was still crying against Noah's shoulder. "Your brother's scared. You're angry. Your father's trying to keep everything together and failing, and I'm a stranger in a strange house, with no idea how to fit in. Seems to me we're all pretty lost." Silence. Then Noah's shoulders dropped, just a fraction. "I don't want to like you," he said quietly. "You don't have to. You just have to tolerate me. Think you can do that?" He considered this, then grudgingly, "Maybe." "That's good enough for me." I stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. "I'll see you boys in the morning. If you need anything in the night, Where am I sleeping, Daniel?" "The room at the end of the hall." His voice was rough. It's yours now." Elizabeth's room, of course. I nodded to the boys and slipped past Daniel into the hallway. Behind me, I heard him trying to comfort Lucas, his voice low and awkward. Heard Noah's sharp responses, the sound of a child who'd had to grow up too fast. The room at the end of the hall was exactly what I expected. Neat, impersonal, stripped of anything that might have made it Elizabeth's. Just a bed, a dresser, a washstand, a window looking out at darkness. I closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to shake. I'd done it. I was married. I had a home, at least temporarily. I was safe from the storm, from Hank Morrison, from the long slide into nothing that had been waiting for me. But I'd also just promised to help raise 2 broken boys and navigate life with a man made of ice. And I had no idea how to do any of it. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, the house creaked and settled. Somewhere below I heard footsteps. Daniel, probably, locking up for the night. I changed out of Elizabeth's dress and into the nightgown Rosa had provided, climbed into Elizabeth's bed, stared at Elizabeth's ceiling. Tomorrow, Margaret's lawyer would arrive. Tomorrow, I'd have to prove I belonged here, prove this marriage was real. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight, I was just Grace Callahan. No, Grace Cross now, lying alone in a dead woman's bed, wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into, and whether I'd survive it. The last thing I remember before sleep took me was the sound of Lucas crying through the walls, and Noah's young voice trying desperately to soothe him. "It's okay, Lucas. It's okay. I've got you. I've got you." The words echoed in my head as I drifted off. I've got you. Someone needed to have them. Someone needed to catch these falling boys before they shattered completely. I just hoped that someone could be me. Because if it couldn't, if I failed them the way everyone else had failed me, then this house would swallow us all, and there'd be nothing left but ghosts and snow and silence. Morning came too early and too cold. I woke to the sound of someone chopping wood, sharp, rhythmic cracks that cut through the pre-dawn silence. My ribs protested as I sat up, reminding me that Rosa's liniment could only do so much. The room was freezing. Frost had formed on the inside of the window overnight, creating delicate patterns that would have been beautiful if they didn't represent how little warmth this house held. I dressed quickly in the clothes Rosa had left. A plain gray dress that had also belonged to Elizabeth, practical boots, a wool shawl. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs. Everything reminded me I was wearing a ghost's wardrobe. Downstairs, the kitchen was empty, but someone had already started the stove. Coffee sat in a pot, strong enough to wake the dead. I poured myself a cup and stood at the window, watching Daniel split wood in the yard. He moved with mechanical precision, each swing of the axe exactly the same as the last. He'd probably been out there for hours. He does that when he can't sleep. I spun around. Noah stood in the doorway, still in his nightshirt, his dark hair sticking up at odd angles. He looked younger in the morning light, less like the fierce protector from last night, and more like the 8-year-old boy he actually was. "Does he do it often?" I asked. "Every night since Mama died." Noah walked to the stove, pulled out a chair, climbed up to reach the top cabinet. His movements were practiced, efficient. He'd been doing this for months. "Lucas will wake up soon. He likes oatmeal, but he won't eat it if there's lumps." "You make breakfast for him?" "Someone has to." He pulled down a tin of oats, measured them into a pot with the careful attention of someone following memorized instructions. "Papa forgets sometimes, or he makes it wrong and Lucas cries." I watched this small boy try to parent his even smaller brother, and something twisted in my chest. "Noah, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He didn't look at me. "That's how it works here. Papa takes care of the ranch. I take care of Lucas. Rosa does everything else." "What about you? Who takes care of you?" The question seemed to startle him. He stopped stirring the oats, his small hand frozen on the wooden spoon. For a moment I thought he might answer, might let something slip past his defenses. Then his face closed off again. "I don't need taking care of. I'm not a baby." "Everyone needs taking care of sometimes." "Well, I don't." He resumed stirring, too hard, sloshing water over the side of the pot. "You can leave now. I've got this." "Noah," I said, "I've got it." His voice cracked, too loud in the quiet kitchen. "I don't need your help. I don't need you." The back door opened and Daniel stepped inside, bringing cold air and the smell of fresh-cut wood with him. His eyes went from Noah to me, reading the tension instantly. "Problem?" he asked. "No," Noah said quickly. "Just making breakfast." Daniel nodded, accepting this at face value, and moved to wash his hands at the pump. I wanted to say something to explain that his 8-year-old son was trying to be an adult and failing, but the look on Noah's face stopped me. He was silently begging me not to tell, not to make him look weak in front of his father. So I kept my mouth shut and drank my coffee. Rosa arrived as the sun was coming up, bustling in with the energy of someone half her age. She took one look at the kitchen, Noah at the stove, me standing uselessly by the window, Daniel ignoring both of us, and shook her head. "Ay, Dios mío, this is how we start the marriage? With the boy cooking and the wife watching?" She shooed Noah away from the stove. "Go wake your brother. gentle, not like last time when you dumped water on his head. That was Lucas's idea? Noah protested, but he went. Rosa turned to me. You cook, senora? I can manage basic things. Nothing fancy. Basic is good. Fancy is wasted on men and boys. She pulled out eggs, bacon, bread. Today is important, yes? The lawyer comes? This afternoon, Daniel said. He'd taken a seat at the table as far from me as the room allowed. 2:00. Then we make the house perfect. Show him this is a real home, a real family. Rosa shot him a pointed look. Which means you two must act like husband and wife, not strangers at a train station. We are strangers, I said. Then you lie better. She cracked eggs into a pan with more force than necessary. Senor Cross, when was the last time you smiled at your wife? We got married 12 hours ago. Then you have 12 hours of smiling to catch up on. Start now. Daniel and I stared at each other across the table. He looked about as comfortable with the idea of smiling as he would be with stripping naked in a church. I probably didn't look much better. This is ridiculous, he muttered. This is survival, Rosa shot back. You want the money or not? Before Daniel could answer, Lucas appeared in the doorway, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. His hair was a mess of curls, his eyes still puffy with sleep. He looked at me, then at his father, then back at me. Is she still here? He asked Noah, who'd followed him down. Where else would she be? Noah said tiredly. Maybe she left, like Mama. The room went silent. Even Rosa stopped cooking. Daniel's face could have been carved from granite. Mama didn't leave, Lucas. We've talked about this. But she's not here. No, she's not here. Then she left. Lucas's bottom lip trembled. And now there's a new lady, and she's going to leave too, and then we'll be alone again. I watched Daniel struggle with this, watched him try to find words that wouldn't be lies but also wouldn't break his son's heart any further. He failed. His mouth opened and closed and nothing came out. So I knelt down, bringing myself to Lucas's eye level. He backed up a step, uncertain. Lucas, I said softly, I'm not going anywhere today. That's all I can promise you. Not forever, not next week, just today. Can that be enough for now? He considered this with the seriousness only a 4-year-old could manage. What about tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'll promise you tomorrow. And the day after that, I'll promise you that day. One day at a time, deal? Lucas looked at his father for confirmation. Daniel gave a slight nod, and Lucas turned back to me. Okay, he whispered. But I'm keeping Roger. He held up the stuffed rabbit protectively. Roger looks very important. I wouldn't dream of taking him. He was Mama's when she was little. Then he's extra important. Lucas nodded, satisfied with this answer, and climbed into his chair. Noah helped him settle, their routine so practiced it hurt to watch. This was a family held together by threads, and those threads were fraying. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Rosa's eggs were good, the bacon crisp, but conversation was non-existent. Daniel ate like he was refueling a machine, quick, efficient, no pleasure in it. Noah watched his father for cues on everything. Lucas pushed food around his plate and whispered to Roger. And I sat there feeling like an intruder at someone else's funeral. Afterward, Rosa put me to work. The house must be perfect, she insisted, handing me a broom. Margaret's lawyer. He will look at everything. He will want to see this is a proper home. It is a proper home, I said. It is a sad home. There is difference. She opened curtains that had been closed, letting weak winter sunlight struggle through dirty windows. Senora Elizabeth, she kept things bright. Flowers on the table even in winter. Music sometimes. She made this place feel like living, not just surviving. I'm not Elizabeth. No, you are Grace, so you make it feel like Grace lives here, not a ghost. I understood what she wasn't saying, that this house was still Elizabeth's, even 8 months after her death. That Daniel had changed nothing, touched nothing, kept everything exactly as she'd left it. That the boys were growing up in a shrine instead of a home. We cleaned for hours. I scrubbed floors until my hands were raw, washed windows until they sparkled, polished furniture that hadn't seen care in months. Rosa worked beside me, occasionally muttering in Spanish about stubborn men and sad houses. Around mid-morning, Daniel came in from the barn. The lawyer will want to see our room, he said without preamble. The bedroom. He'll check to make sure we're actually sharing it. I straightened from scrubbing the floor. But we're not. I know that. He doesn't need to know that. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I moved some of your things into the master bedroom. My things, too. Made it look lived in by both of us. And where will you actually sleep? Foreman's cabin, same as last night. He met my eyes. But as far as anyone knows, we're sharing that room. Understood? Lying to a lawyer seems unwise. Lying is the whole point of this arrangement, Grace. Or did you forget that part? He had a point, much as I hated to admit it. Fine. Anything else I need to know before this performance? Act like you belong here. Act like we're comfortable with each other. We're not. I know, but he can't know that. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Look, I'm not asking you to pretend you love me. Just pretend you don't hate me. I don't hate you. Then this should be easy. It wasn't easy. Nothing about this was easy. At noon, Rosa made lunch. Soup and bread, simple but filling. The boys came in from playing outside, their cheeks red with cold. Lucas had snow in his hair and wouldn't stop talking about the fort Noah had helped him build. It was the most animated I'd seen him. It's got walls this high. He held his hand up to show me, beaming. And a flag made from Papa's old shirt. That shirt had holes, Daniel said mildly. Now it has a purpose, Noah replied, with the first hint of humor I'd heard from him. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. Fair enough. We ate together, still awkward, but slightly less painful than breakfast. Lucas told me all about his fort, about the rabbits he'd seen that morning, about how Noah had promised to teach him to ice skate on the pond when it froze solid. Noah stayed quiet, but didn't glare at me quite as much. Progress, I supposed. After lunch, Rosa pulled me aside. The lawyer will be here soon. You must change clothes. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Nothing is wrong, but you must look like the wife of a rancher, not a servant. She led me upstairs to the master bedroom, Daniel's room, or what was supposed to be our room now. It was bigger than the room I'd slept in last night, with a large bed covered in a quilt that must have been handmade. A wardrobe stood against one wall, a dresser against another. Everything was neat, impersonal, carefully void of character. Rosa opened the wardrobe, revealing more of Elizabeth's dresses. Choose something nice, something that says you belong here. I chose a deep green wool dress with simple lines and a high collar. It fit better than the others, though it was still slightly too long. Rosa pinned the hem quickly, then stepped back to assess me. Better. Now the hair. My hair is fine. Your hair looks like you slept in a wagon, which you did, but the lawyer does not need to know this. She sat me down and began working out the tangles with firm, efficient movements. You're nervous, yes? Wouldn't you be? Si. But nervous is good. It means you care about succeeding. She twisted my hair into something resembling a respectable bun. Tell me something, senora. Why did you really come here? I told Daniel I needed work. That is what you say. I ask what is true. Rosa's hands paused in my hair. A woman does not travel across the country in winter for just work. She runs. What were you running from? I could have lied. Should have, probably. But Rosa's hands in my hair reminded me of my mother, dead 10 years now, and the truth slipped out before I could stop it. A man who thought I needed to be taught my place, a town that agreed with him, a teaching position I lost because I wouldn't keep my mouth shut when I saw injustice. I swallowed hard. I ran because staying meant dying one way or another. Rosa's hands resumed their work, gentle now. And now you are here, married to a man made of stone, mothering children who are not yours, pretending everything is fine. Yes. That is also a kind of dying, no? Maybe, but it's slower, and I'm tougher than I look. You will need to be, senora. This house, these people, they will test you. Every day they will test you. She finished with my hair and turned me to face her. But I think maybe you are strong enough, maybe even stronger than you know. I hope you're right. I am always right. Ask anyone. She smiled and some of the weight on my chest lifted. A knock on the door made us both turn. Daniel stood in the doorway, also changed, wearing a clean shirt, vest, his hair combed back. He looked uncomfortable in the formal clothes, like a wild animal someone had tried to domesticate. He's here, Daniel said. Wagon just pulled up. My stomach dropped. Already? Early, apparently. Daniel's jaw tightened. You ready? No, but I don't suppose that matters. Not really. He held out his hand. We should go down together. Unified front, remember? I took his hand. It was the second time we'd touched. And this time I noticed the calluses, the strength in his grip, the way his fingers were warmer than I'd expected. He didn't let go as we descended the stairs, and I was grateful for it. The physical connection, false as it was, helped steady my nerves. The lawyer was already in the front room, brushing snow off his coat and looking around with sharp, assessing eyes. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with sandy hair and a face that suggested he smiled often. Right now, though, he looked all business. Mr. Cross, he said, extending a hand. I'm Robert Fleming, representing Margaret Thornton's interests. You must be the new Mrs. Cross. Grace, I said, shaking his hand. Yes. Fleming's eyes took in everything. The way Daniel and I stood together, my hand still in his, the slight awkwardness between us that we couldn't quite hide. I watched him catalog it all, filing it away for later analysis. Congratulations on your marriage, he said, and I couldn't tell if he meant it. Mrs. Thornton asked me to verify certain details before releasing the funds. You understand it's nothing personal, just due diligence. Of course, Daniel said. His hand tightened slightly on mine. What do you need? Well, first, the marriage certificate. I'll need to verify it's properly filed and dated. Daniel produced the document from his pocket, handed it over. Fleming examined it carefully, checking the signatures, the date, the Reverend's seal. Everything appears to be in order, he said finally. You were married last night? Yes. Quick work. We saw no point in waiting, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. When Daniel proposed, I accepted. Simple as that. And how did you two meet, if you don't mind my asking? I felt Daniel tense beside me. We hadn't prepared for this question, hadn't coordinated our story. But I was a teacher. I'd spent years thinking on my feet. Through correspondence, I said. I was teaching in Cedar Falls, and Daniel wrote to me about a position here. When I arrived, we discovered we were compatible. The arrangement evolved. It wasn't entirely a lie, just a creative interpretation of events. Fleming made a note in his book. And the children? How have they adjusted to this sudden change? They're doing well, Daniel said. It was absolutely not true, and Fleming's expression suggested he knew it. May I meet them? Daniel called for the boys. They appeared reluctantly, Noah suspicious and Lucas hiding behind his brother. Fleming knelt down to their level, his professional mask slipping into something warmer. Hello, boys. I'm Mr. Fleming. I'm here to make sure your new mother is taking good care of you. She's not our mother, Noah said flatly. My heart sank, so much for unified fronts. But Fleming just nodded, unsurprised. Of course not. No one could replace your real mother. But is Mrs. Cross being kind to you? Lucas peeked out from behind Noah. She promised to stay today. Just today? One day at a time, Lucas said seriously, because tomorrow isn't today yet. Fleming smiled at that. That's very wise. And you, Noah? What do you think of Mrs. Cross? Noah looked at me, then at his father, then back at Fleming. I could see him weighing his words, trying to decide how much truth to tell. She's okay, he said finally. Better than nothing. It was probably the best endorsement I was going to get, and from Fleming's expression, he knew it. Well, that's honest, at least. Fleming stood, brushing off his knees. Mr. Cross, I'd like to see the rest of the house, if you don't mind. Get a sense of the living situation. Of course. Daniel's hand found mine again as we led Fleming through the house. The tour felt like an interrogation. Fleming examined everything, the kitchen, the boys' room, the parlor. He asked questions about daily routines, about meals, about who slept where. We answered as best we could, trying to paint a picture of normalcy that didn't quite exist. Finally, we reached the master bedroom. Fleming stepped inside, taking in the carefully staged scene. Daniel's razor by the wash basin, my brush on the dresser, 2 pillows on the bed, both with indentations suggesting recent use. It looked real. It looked lived in. It was completely false. This seems comfortable, Fleming said. How are you finding ranch life, Mrs. Cross? Challenging, I admitted, but I'm adapting. And your husband, is he helping you adapt? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Fleming was asking if this was a real marriage, if there was genuine partnership here, or if I was just a hired hand with a ring. I felt Daniel's hand tense in mine again. He was going to say something stiff and formal, something that would damn us both. So I did something reckless. I stepped closer to Daniel, leaned against his side, and looked up at him with what I hoped was affection. He's been patient with my mistakes, more patient than I deserve, probably. Daniel stared down at me, clearly thrown, but after a moment's hesitation, his arm came around my shoulders, stiff, awkward, but present. "Grace is doing fine," he said roughly. "Better than fine. The boys like her. Rosa likes her. That's enough for me." It was possibly the kindest thing he'd said about me since we'd met, and Fleming seemed to notice. His expression softened slightly. "Well, I think I've seen everything I need to see." He closed his notebook. "I'll be staying in town overnight, filing my report tomorrow. Assuming everything checks out, and I don't see why it wouldn't, Mrs. Thornton's bank will release the funds by week's end." "That's acceptable," Daniel said. "One more thing." Fleming's eyes sharpened. "Mrs. Thornton will be visiting in the spring. She'll want to see for herself that her nephews are being properly raised. I assume you'll be ready for that inspection?" "We'll be ready," I said before Daniel could respond. Fleming nodded, apparently satisfied. "Then I'll see myself out. Thank you for your hospitality." We walked him to the door, maintaining our careful proximity until his wagon pulled away. Only when he was out of sight did Daniel release me, stepping back like I'd burned him. "Well," he said, "that was uncomfortable. Could have been worse." "Could it?" He ran a hand through his hair, destroying whatever order Rosa had imposed. He knew. You could tell he knew something wasn't right. Maybe, but he approved us anyway. "For now, wait until Margaret shows up. She won't be as easy to fool. Then we have until spring to make this convincing." I crossed my arms, suddenly cold without his proximity. "That's months away. Plenty of time." "To do what? Fall in love? Become a real family?" Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This isn't a fairy tale, Grace. We're play acting. That's all we'll ever be." Something in his certainty annoyed me. "You're very sure of that?" "I am. Because I know my limitations. And loving someone again isn't in my repertoire anymore. I never asked you to love me." "Good, because I can't." He turned toward the door. "I need to check the stock. Don't wait dinner for me." He left before I could respond, letting in cold air and leaving me standing in the front room alone. Rosa appeared from the kitchen, carrying Lucas on her hip. "Well, that went terribly." "We passed the inspection. Passing is not the same as succeeding, Senora." She set Lucas down. "But you did something right at the end. When you touched him, looked at him like he mattered. That was good." "That was acting." "Was it?" Rosa's knowing smile made me uncomfortable. "Maybe for him, but I think you meant it a little bit." "I barely know the man." "Knowing and feeling are not the same thing. You will learn this." She shooed Lucas toward the stairs. "Go play with your brother. Quiet games, not running." Lucas scampered off, and Rosa turned back to me. "Tonight, you will eat dinner with the family. You will sit beside Senor Cross. You will begin to build the habit of closeness, even if it feels false, because habits become truth, given time. Or they become comfortable lies. Sometimes those are the same thing." She headed back to the kitchen. "Set the table, por favor, and use the good dishes. We are celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "Survival, senora. Today you survived. Tomorrow, you survive again. That is worth celebrating, no?" I supposed it was. The afternoon passed slowly. I helped Rosa prepare dinner while the boys played upstairs. Every so often I'd hear Lucas laugh, a bright, unexpected sound that seemed to startle even him. Noah's voice would follow, patient and protective, explaining some game or telling some story. When Daniel finally came in from the barn, dinner was ready. Rosa had prepared a feast by ranch standards: roasted chicken, potatoes, carrots, fresh bread. The good dishes were set out, candles lit. It looked almost festive. Daniel stopped in the doorway, taking it all in. "What's this?" "Dinner," Rosa said simply. "Sit." He sat across from me, wary. The boys took their usual places. For a moment, we all just looked at each other, uncertain how to begin. Then Lucas reached for the bread and Noah grabbed his hand. "Wait for Grace." Daniel's face hardened. We haven't done that since—" "Mama always said Grace," Noah interrupted. "Maybe Grace could say it now, since it's her name and everything." 4 pairs of eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of expectation, the test buried in Noah's words. He was daring me to fail, to prove I wasn't his mother, couldn't fill her shoes. I don't know what your mother used to say, I told him honestly. She'd thank the sky for the food and ask for blessings on the family. Lucas's voice was small, and she'd say we loved each other even when we were mad. Simple, honest, very Elizabeth, from what little I knew of her. I took a breath. Then let's thank the day for this food and hope for patience with each other, even when we're mad, even when things are hard, especially then. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't traditional, but Lucas nodded, satisfied, and even Noah's expression softened slightly. We ate. Conversation came easier than I'd expected, small things, safe things. Lucas talked about his fort. Noah mentioned a book he was reading. Daniel discussed plans for the spring planting, his voice losing some of its harsh edge as he spoke about the land. And I listened, learning the rhythms of this family, finding spaces where I might fit. After dinner, Rosa shooed everyone out of the kitchen, except me. "You wash, I dry," she said, handing me a cloth. "Tomorrow, you will do both. But tonight, we work together." As we cleaned, she taught me the small details of running this household, where things belonged, what the boys liked, Daniel's preferences. "He takes his coffee black, too hot," she said. "He will burn his tongue and not complain, stubborn man." "I've noticed." "You will notice more. He has many stubborn parts." She dried a plate thoughtfully. "But also soft parts buried deep. The way he watches his sons when they are not looking. The way he kept his wife's garden tools, even though he cannot bring himself to plant anything. He loved her. Si, very much. Too much, maybe. Now he's afraid to love anything again, even his own boys. Especially his own boys." Rosa hung up her towel. "This is what you must fix, Senora. I can't fix him. He doesn't want to be fixed." "No, but you can show him it is safe to try, little by little, day by day. And if I can't, then this house will stay cold, and those boys will grow up thinking love is something that leaves." She patted my shoulder. "But I do not think you will fail. You have teacher eyes. You see what others miss. Use that." Later, after the boys were in bed and Rosa had gone home, I found myself alone in the darkened house. Daniel was still outside somewhere, checking locks, avoiding me. I couldn't tell which. I wandered to the window and looked out at the snow-covered ranch. This was my life now. This cold house, this broken family, this man who wouldn't let himself feel. I'd signed up for it with my eyes open, but the reality was so much harder than I'd imagined. Behind me, the stairs creaked. I turned to find Noah standing there in his nightshirt, clutching a book. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "Lucas is snoring, and I keep thinking." "About what?" "Mama used to read to us before bed. Papa tried after she died, but his voice is wrong, too rough. It scared Lucas." Noah looked down at his book. "I've been reading to Lucas instead, but some of the words are hard." He held out the book, a collection of adventure stories, well-worn and obviously loved. "Would you like help with the words?" I offered carefully. Noah hesitated, then nodded. "Just for tonight, just because Lucas needs it." "Of course, just for tonight." We sat together on the sofa, the book between us. Noah read slowly, stumbling over difficult passages. When he got stuck, I'd help him sound it out, pronounce it, understand it. He was bright, sharper than most 8-year-olds I'd taught, but he was also tired, carrying too much weight for such small shoulders. "You're good at this," I said, after he'd navigated a particularly tricky paragraph. "Mama taught me. She said reading was magic, that it could take you anywhere." She was right. "Do you think—" He stopped, uncertain. "What?" "Do you think she can see us? From wherever she is?" I thought about all the safe lies I could tell, all the comfortable reassurances, but Noah deserved better than that. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think if she can, she'd be proud of you. The way you take care of Lucas. The way you're trying so hard to keep everything together." "I'm not keeping it together. Everything's falling apart." "Then you're falling apart slower than most people would. That counts for something." Noah considered this. "Grace?" "Yes?" "You don't have to try so hard. To make us like you, I mean. We know this is just business. Papa told us." The words hurt more than they should have. "And if I'm not trying? If I just Want to help? Then I guess that's okay. But don't expect us to be grateful or anything. We're doing you a favor too, giving you a place to stay. Fair enough. He closed the book, stood up. At the doorway, he paused. That thing you said at dinner, about patience, even when we're mad. Mama would have liked that. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the weight of his words. The front door opened and Daniel came in, bringing cold and the smell of horses. He saw me on the sofa and stopped. You're still up? So are you. I had work. In the dark? He didn't answer, just moved to the stove to warm his hands. We stood in silence for a long moment. Noah came down, I said finally. He needed help reading to Lucas. He can read fine on his own. Maybe, but he asked for help anyway. Daniel's jaw tightened. Don't read too much into it, the boy's just tired. Or maybe he's just a boy, one who needs more than a father made of stone. The words were out before I could stop them. Daniel turned to face me, his expression dangerous. What did you say? You heard me. Those boys are drowning, Daniel. They need you, the real you, not this fortress you've built. But you're so busy protecting yourself that you can't see them falling apart. You've been here one day and you think you know everything about my family? I know enough to see their suffering. I know enough to see you're all suffering, and you're too damn stubborn to ask for help. I didn't ask for your psychological assessment. No, you asked me to be a wife and mother. Well, mothers tell hard truths, wives too, probably. So here's your truth. You're failing them. Not because you're a bad father, but because you're too scared to be a good one. Daniel crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping inches from me. For a moment I thought he might yell, might throw me out, might end this whole arrangement right here. Instead, his voice came out quiet and deadly. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? I've watched you avoid your sons all day. Watched Noah parent Lucas because you won't. Watched you hide in the barn rather than eat dinner with your family. That's not strength, Daniel. That's cowardice. His hand slammed onto the table beside me, making me jump. I am keeping them alive. Keeping this ranch from going under. Keeping food on the table and a roof over their heads. That's not cowardice. No, it's survival, but they don't need survival anymore. They need a father. They have a father. Then act like it. My voice rose to match his. Stop treating them like obligations and start treating them like sons. I don't know how. The words ripped out of him, raw and painful. I don't know how to do this without her. Elizabeth was the one who knew what to say, how to comfort them, how to make everything feel safe. I keep the wheels turning. That's all I know how to do. The anger drained out of me, replaced by something softer and sadder. Then learn. They'll teach you if you let them. What if I can't? What if I fail them worse than I already have? Then you fail. But at least you'll fail trying, instead of failing because you gave up. Daniel stared at me for a long moment, something raw and vulnerable flickering across his face. Then he turned away, his shoulders rigid. You should go to bed, he said roughly. Long day tomorrow. Daniel. Go to bed, Grace. I went, but I paused at the stairs. For what it's worth, I don't think you're failing them. I think you're terrified, and that's different. He didn't respond, didn't even look at me. Just stood there by the cold stove, alone in the dark. Upstairs, I could hear Lucas snoring softly. Could hear Noah shifting in his bed, probably still awake, probably listening to every word through the floorboards. I climbed into the bed that wasn't mine, in the room that still smelled like lavender and loss, and stared at the ceiling. One day down. Hundreds more to go. And already I could feel the weight of this place, these people, pressing down on me. Could feel myself being pulled into their grief, their brokenness, their desperate need for something I wasn't sure I could provide. Tomorrow, I'd try again. Tomorrow I'd find ways to reach them, to help them, to somehow make this arrangement into something resembling a family. But tonight, I just lay in the dark and wondered if Rosa was right, if habits really could become truth, or if we'd all just become comfortable with the lie. The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they were something. Progress came in inches, not miles. Lucas letting me tie his boots one morning, Noah asking me to check his arithmetic, Daniel nodding at me across the breakfast table instead of looking through me like I was glass. Small things that meant everything and nothing. Rosa had been right about habits. We fell into them without meaning to. I'd wake early and start the coffee. Daniel would come in from his pre-dawn chores and grunt something that might have been thanks. The boys would stumble down, sleepy and rumpled, and I'd get them fed and dressed while Daniel planned the day's work. By mid-January, it almost felt normal. Almost. Grace, Noah won't share the jam. Lucas's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I was at the stove trying to keep the eggs from burning while simultaneously preventing what looked like an impending war over breakfast condiments. There's plenty of jam for every one of us, I said without turning around. But he took the whole jar. I did not, Noah shot back. I took one spoonful and you're being a baby about it. Am not. Are too. Boys. Daniel's voice cut through the argument like a knife. Both children went silent immediately. He didn't even look up from his coffee. Figure it out yourselves. It wasn't the warmest parenting approach, but it worked. Noah grudgingly pushed the jam jar toward his brother, and Lucas took it with a triumphant smile that lasted exactly as long as it took Noah to stick his tongue out at him. I brought the eggs to the table, trying not to smile. This was progress too, in its own way, the boys fighting like normal brothers instead of two shell-shocked soldiers trying not to upset each other. It meant they felt safe enough to be petty. Eat up, I said. Rosa's bringing supplies from town this afternoon, and I need you both to help unload. Can we go to town next time? Lucas asked hopefully. I want to see the store. Maybe, I said, which was better than the automatic no he would have gotten a month ago. Daniel stood, draining his coffee in one long gulp. I'll be working on the north fence line today. Wire's been cut again. I looked up sharply. Cut? Not broken? Cut. His expression was grim. Third time this month. Could it be animals? Animals don't make clean cuts with wire snips. He grabbed his coat from the hook. Probably just kids from town, looking for trouble. Nothing to worry about. But his jaw was tight, and I'd learned to read the small tells. Daniel was worried, even if he wouldn't say it. Be careful, I said. He paused at the door, glanced back. For a moment, something almost soft crossed his face. Always am. Then he was gone, and I was left with two boys and a growing sense of unease I couldn't quite name. The morning passed in its usual rhythm. I taught the boys their lessons. Noah was working through arithmetic and geography while Lucas practiced his letters. Teaching them was the one part of this arrangement that felt truly mine. The one thing I could do without feeling like I was wearing someone else's skin. Montana is here, Noah said, pointing to the map I'd drawn on the slate. And Philadelphia is all the way over here. That's where you came from. That's right. Why'd you leave? He asked, not looking up from the map. It was a fair question. Over the past weeks, Noah had been asking more of them, carefully probing the edges of who I was, testing whether I'd tell him the truth or feed him comfortable lies. I didn't fit there anymore, I said. Sometimes places outgrow you, or you outgrow them. Did people not like you? Some people didn't, no. Why not? Because I asked questions they didn't want to answer. Because I stood up when they wanted me to sit down. I met his eyes. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry. Noah absorbed this, his young face serious. Papa says we shouldn't borrow trouble, that we should keep our heads down and mind our own business. Your papa's probably right about that. But you didn't keep your head down. No, I didn't. I smiled ruefully. And look where it got me. Married to a stranger in the middle of nowhere, teaching geography to two boys who'd rather be building snow forts. Lucas looked up from his slate, where he'd been carefully forming the letter B. I like geography. It's like treasure maps, but real. That's exactly what it is, I said, grateful for the interruption. Now, show me that B you've been working on. He held up his slate proudly. The B was backwards and lopsided, but he'd worked hard on it. I praised him anyway, and his smile could have lit the whole room. Around noon, Rosa arrived in a wagon loaded with supplies. The boys ran out to help, excited by the prospect of new things. I followed, pulling my shawl tight against the bitter wind. Careful with that one, Rosa called as Noah struggled with a heavy sack. It's got the sugar, and if it breaks, I will make you explain to your papa why there's none for his coffee. Noah adjusted his grip, and between him and one of the ranch hands, a quiet man named Tom who'd stayed on despite the financial troubles, they got the sack inside. Rosa climbed down from the wagon, moving stiffly. She wasn't young, and the cold made her joints ache. I tried to get her to rest more, but she just laughed at me. Rest is for when you're dead, senora. While I breathe, I work. Now she pulled me aside while the boys were distracted with unloading. I heard things in town, she said quietly. What kind of things? Talk. About strangers asking questions. About the ranch. About Senor Cross. Her dark eyes were worried. About the debt that was paid off so suddenly. My stomach tightened. What kind of strangers? Rough men. Not from around here. They were drinking at the saloon, asking who owns the Cross Ranch, how many hands he keeps, whether he has family. Rosa's voice dropped lower. Tom heard them. He says they had the look of trouble. Did he tell Daniel? He tried. Senor Cross said it was probably nothing, that strangers pass through all the time. Rosa shook her head. But I know trouble when I hear it, and this is trouble. I looked toward the barn where Daniel was working. He should know about this. He knows. He just does not want to worry. Rosa gripped my arm. But you should worry, senora. You should worry and prepare. Prepare how? The rifle in the hall closet. You know how to use it? I thought of my father teaching me to shoot cans off fence posts back in Philadelphia, teaching his daughter things most girls weren't taught because he believed women should know how to protect themselves. Yes, I said, I know how. Good. Keep it in mind. Rosa released my arm and raised her voice to normal volume as the boys came back out. Now, help me with these vegetables before they freeze solid. The afternoon wore on. I tried to push Rosa's warning to the back of my mind, tried to focus on the ordinary tasks of running a household. But the unease sat heavy in my gut, growing as the sun tracked west and shadows lengthened across the snow. Daniel came in for dinner late, his face grim. He had a cut on his hand, hastily bandaged. What happened? I asked, reaching for his hand without thinking. He pulled back reflexively, then seemed to catch himself. Let me examine it. Caught it on the wire, it's fine. It wasn't fine. It needed proper cleaning and a better bandage. But I didn't argue, just heated water and pulled out Rosa's medical kit. How bad is the fence? I asked as I cleaned the wound. Bad enough. Someone's been cutting it systematically. Not random vandalism. They're trying to create paths into the property. For what? Stock theft, probably. Or scouting for a bigger job. He winced as I applied antiseptic. I've sent word to the sheriff, but he's 2 days away and not likely to do much about cut fence wire. Rosa said there were strangers in town, asking questions about the ranch. Daniel's eyes sharpened. When? Today. She heard it at the general store. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he stood, crossed to the window, looked out at the darkening landscape. Could be nothing. Could be everything. Hard to tell. What do we do? We stay alert. Keep the boys close to the house. Make sure the doors are locked at night. He turned back to me. And you need to know where the weapons are, just in case. Rosa already told me about the rifle. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Good. There's also a pistol in my desk drawer and a shotgun in the barn. You know how to shoot? My father taught me. Then we're prepared as we can be. He moved back to the table, sat down heavily. Probably nothing will come of it, but I'd rather be ready for trouble than caught off guard. Dinner that night was subdued. Even Lucas seemed to sense the tension, eating quietly instead of chattering about his day. Noah watched his father with worried eyes, old beyond his years. After the boys were in bed, I found Daniel checking the locks on the windows, testing each one methodically. You think something's really going to happen, I said. It wasn't a question. I think men who scout properties and cut fences aren't doing it for fun. He moved to the next window. Elizabeth's sister's money, word got out somehow. Probably the lawyer, probably the bank. Someone knows we suddenly had cash to pay off debt, and they're wondering if there's more. Is there? No, every penny went to the bank and essential repairs, but thieves don't know that. He finished with the windows, moved to check the back door. They'll come looking anyway. When? If they're smart? Never. If they're desperate or stupid? He shrugged. Could be tonight. Could be next week. Could be I'm wrong about all of this and nothing happens. But his hands were steady on the rifle he pulled from the closet, checking it with practiced ease. This was a man who'd seen trouble before, who knew how to prepare for it. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. "If something happens, if men come here looking for trouble, you take the boys and you hide. There's a root cellar off the kitchen, hidden behind the pantry. You get them down there, you stay quiet, and you don't come out until I come for you." "And what will you be doing?" "Whatever needs doing." His voice was flat. "This is my land, my home. I won't let anyone take it." "You mean you'll fight?" "If it comes to that." I thought about the two boys upstairs, about Lucas's nightmares and Noah's fierce protectiveness, about the fragile stability we'd built over the past weeks, about what would happen to them if they lost Daniel too. "Then you'll need help," I said. "Grace, I can shoot. You said so yourself. And if they're coming for the ranch, they're coming for all of us. I won't hide in a cellar while you fight alone. The boys need someone. The boys need their father alive." I crossed my arms. "I'll get them to safety first, but after that, I'm coming back up. You can argue about it now, or you can accept it, and we can plan accordingly." Daniel stared at me for a long moment. I watched something shift in his expression, surprise maybe, or grudging respect. Finally, he nodded. "You're stubborn." "You're just now noticing?" Almost a smile. Almost. "All right, we do this together, but if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. Same goes for you." "Fair enough." He handed me the pistol from his desk, showed me how to check if it was loaded, how to aim, how to breathe. His hands on mine were steady, impersonal, but I felt the warmth of them anyway. "You really think they'll come tonight?" I asked. "I think if I was them, I'd come when the household's asleep and the moon's dark." He glanced toward the window. "New moon's tonight." Right on cue, somewhere outside, a horse whinnied nervously. Then another, the sound of hooves stamping, agitated. Daniel went still. "Get the boys, now!" I ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time, burst into the boys' room without knocking. Noah sat up immediately, already alert. "What's wrong?" "I need you to do exactly what I say, and I need you to do it quickly. Can you do that?" I kept my voice calm, level, even though my heart was hammering. Noah nodded, already reaching for Lucas, shaking him awake. "What's happening?" Lucas mumbled, confused and scared. "We're going to play a game," I said, pulling him from bed. "A quiet game. We're going to hide in a special place, and we have to be absolutely silent. Can you do that?" Lucas's eyes went wide, but he nodded. Noah was already on his feet, understanding without explanation that this was serious. I got them downstairs as quickly as possible. Daniel was at the front window, rifle in hand, watching something I couldn't see. "How many?" I asked. 4 riders, maybe more behind them." His voice was tight. "Get them hidden." I hustled the boys into the kitchen, to the pantry. Rosa had shown me the hidden cellar entrance weeks ago, a clever trapdoor disguised as part of the floor. I pulled it open, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. "Down," I told them. "Quick and quiet." Noah climbed down first, helping Lucas after him. I grabbed the oil lamp from the table, lit it quickly, handed it down. "Stay down here," I said. "No matter what you hear. Don't come up until your father or I come for you. Understand?" "Grace," Noah's voice wavered. "Are they going to hurt Papa?" "Your Papa's tough. He'll be fine." I hoped I wasn't lying. "But I need you to be brave now. Take care of Lucas. Can you do that?" Noah squared his shoulders, suddenly looking much older than 8. "Yes, ma'am." "Good boy." I started to close the trap door, then paused. "Noah, I'm proud of you." Then I shut them in darkness and prayed they'd stay there. Back in the front room, Daniel had moved away from the window. They're circling the house, looking for entry points. "How long do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less." He handed me a shotgun. "You know how to use this?" "Point and shoot. Don't get kicked by the recoil." "Close enough." He positioned himself by the door, rifle ready. "When they come through, let me take the first one. You cover the sides." My mouth was dry. My hands were shaking, but I checked the shotgun, made sure it was loaded, and took position by the window. "Daniel?" I said quietly. "Yeah?" "If this goes wrong, if we don't make it, we'll make it. But if we don't, tell the boys I meant what I said, about staying, about all of it." He looked at me then, and something passed between us. Understanding, maybe, or recognition that we'd become something more than strangers pretending to be married. "You can tell them yourself," he said, "after we run these bastards off our land." A crash from the back of the house, glass breaking, wood splintering. They were coming in through the kitchen. Daniel moved fast, repositioning. "Stay here, cover the front, don't let anyone through." Then he was gone, and I was alone in the dark room, listening to footsteps and voices, trying to tell friend from foe by sound alone. More breaking glass. A shout, then a gunshot, deafening in the enclosed space, and everything went to hell. I heard Daniel fire, heard someone scream, heard boots running, things crashing. "Stay at the front," he'd said. But the sounds were coming from everywhere now, and I couldn't tell if he was winning or losing. The front door exploded inward, kicked open by a man the size of a small mountain. He had a gun in his hand and murder in his eyes, and he was looking right at me. Time slowed down. I saw his finger tightening on the trigger, saw the barrel swinging toward me. Knew I had maybe a second to act. I fired. The shotgun kicked like a mule, slamming into my shoulder hard enough to bruise. But the man went down, screaming, clutching his leg. Not dead. I'd aimed low without meaning to, some part of my brain unwilling to kill even in self-defense. But he was down, and that's what mattered. I pumped the shotgun, chambering another round, and stepped over him toward the chaos in the back of the house. The kitchen was a disaster. 2 men were down, one not moving, one groaning and clutching his shoulder. Daniel was grappling with a third, both of them having lost their weapons, fighting with fists and fury. A 4th man appeared in the doorway, the one I hadn't accounted for. He had a pistol aimed at Daniel's back. I didn't think, just raised the shotgun and fired. The blast took him in the chest and he went down hard. This time, he didn't get up. Daniel threw his opponent against the wall, knocking him unconscious, then spun toward me. Blood ran from a cut above his eye, and his knuckles were split, but he was alive. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so. You?" "I'll live." He grabbed rope from the pantry. "Help me tie these bastards up before they wake up." We worked quickly, binding the ones who were still breathing. The one I'd shot in the chest, I tried not to look at him. Tried not to think about the fact that I'd just killed a man. But my hands were steady as I tied knots, and my voice didn't shake when I asked, "Are there more?" "Don't think so. 4 riders, 4 men." Daniel finished with the last one, then went to check the doors and windows. "But we should—" A crash from upstairs made us both freeze. "The boys," I breathed. We ran for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. The boys' room door was open, and inside, a 5th man stood over the trapdoor to the cellar, trying to pry it open. He must have come in through the upstairs window, circled around while we were busy downstairs. He heard us coming and spun, gun in hand. Daniel dove for cover, pulling me with him, and the bullet meant for my head buried itself in the doorframe. "You want to live? You'll back off," the man shouted. He was young, panicked, his gun hand shaking. "I've got kids down there. I'll hurt them if you don't back off." "The hell you will," Daniel said, his voice deadly calm. "I mean it. He didn't get to finish. Noah burst up through the trap door like an avenging fury, slamming into the man's legs. They both went down in a tangle of limbs, the gun skittering across the floor. I grabbed it before the man could recover, aimed it at him with both hands. "Don't move," I said. "Don't even breathe hard." The man froze, staring up at me with wide eyes. He couldn't have been more than 20, all fear and bad decisions. Daniel pulled Noah off him, checked him for injuries. "You hurt?" "No, sir." Noah was shaking but upright. "I heard him walking around up here and I thought if I could stop him." "You did good." Daniel's voice was rough with something that might have been pride. "Stupid but good. Don't ever do it again." Lucas appeared in the trapdoor clutching Roger, his face streaked with tears. "Is it over?" I went to him, pulled him up, held him close. "It's over, sweetheart. It's over." But it wasn't, not quite. We still had to deal with 5 men tied up in our kitchen and dead man in our house, and the aftermath of violence that would stain this place for a long time. Daniel sent Noah to wake Tom, who'd slept through the whole thing in the bunkhouse. Between them, they hauled the bound men to the barn and locked them in. Tom rode for the sheriff while Daniel and I tried to clean up the mess. The dead man, the one I'd shot, we covered with a sheet and left in the kitchen. There was nothing else to do with him until the law arrived. I found myself shaking as the adrenaline wore off. My hands wouldn't steady, my breath kept hitching. I'd killed a man. Shot him dead in my own kitchen. Hey, Daniel's hand on my shoulder, warm and solid. Look at me. I looked up. His face was serious, blood-streaked, exhausted. You saved my life, he said quietly. That man was going to shoot me in the back. You stopped him. I killed him. You protected this family. There's a difference. His hand tightened on my shoulder. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did what had to be done. Nothing more, nothing less. I didn't think I could. None of us know what we can do until we have to do it. He pulled me close, and for the first time since I'd known him, the embrace was real. Not for show, not for appearances, just one person holding another through the aftermath of violence. You were brave tonight, braver than I had any right to expect. I buried my face in his shoulder and tried not to cry. Failed. He let me, standing there in our ruined kitchen, holding me while I shook apart. His shirt soaked up my tears, and his hand rubbed circles on my back. And for those few minutes, we weren't strangers in an arrangement. We were just two people who'd survived something terrible together. Eventually, the boys crept downstairs. They'd been remarkably quiet, remarkably brave, but now that it was over, they needed reassurance. Needed to know the adults were still solid, still safe. Daniel released me and gathered both boys into his arms. Lucas clung to him like a barnacle. Noah tried to be brave, but ended up pressing his face into his father's chest anyway. You did exactly what Grace told you to do, Daniel said. Both of you. I'm proud of you. I was scared, Lucas whispered. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. Daniel looked at Noah. Though next time, stay in the cellar like you're told. He was going to find us anyway, Noah said. I heard him walking around. I thought if I could surprise him. You could have been killed. So could you. So could Grace. Noah's voice was fierce. We're a family. Families protect each other. The words hung in the air. We're a family, said with absolute certainty by an 8-year-old boy who'd spent weeks insisting I wasn't his mother, and this wasn't real. Daniel's expression softened. Yeah, he said roughly. I guess they do. The sheriff arrived at dawn, bringing 2 deputies and a lot of questions. We told him everything, the cut fences, the strangers in town, the attack. He examined the bodies, questioned the survivors, and eventually pronounced the whole thing self-defense. You're lucky, he said, though he didn't sound like he thought luck had much to do with it. Could have gone a lot worse. Could have, Daniel agreed. These men, they're known associates of the Garfield gang. Been hitting ranches across 3 territories, targeting ones with recent cash influx. The sheriff shook his head. Someone talked, banker, lawyer, someone. Let slip that you'd come into money. So they came to take it, and found more than they bargained for. The sheriff looked at me with new respect. Mrs. Cross, I hear you handled yourself well. I didn't feel like I'd handled anything well. I felt like I'd barely survived. But I nodded anyway. Thank you, Sheriff. After they left, taking the prisoners and the body with them, we stood in the yard and looked at our house. Windows broken, doors splintered, blood on the kitchen floor. It would take days to repair the damage, weeks to feel safe again. But we were alive. All of us. Bruised and shaken, but breathing. Grace? Lucas tugged on my skirt. Are they coming back? No, baby. They're not coming back. Promise? I knelt down, looked him in the eyes. I promise. Your papa and I won't let anyone hurt you. He nodded, satisfied, and ran off to help Noah collect the chickens that had escaped during the chaos. Daniel and I stood there alone, watching them. We should talk, he said finally. About what? About the fact that you could have died last night. That you almost did. That this arrangement, he stopped searching for words. That it's not fair to you, any of it. Life's not fair, we've both learned that already. I'm serious, Grace. You signed up to be a housekeeper with a ring, not a soldier defending a ranch against outlaws. And you signed up for a business arrangement, not for someone who'd argue with you and challenge you and refuse to hide when you told her to. I met his eyes. But here we are anyway. Here we are, he echoed. We stood in silence for a moment. Then Daniel did something unexpected. He reached for my hand. Not for show, not for an audience, just for us. Thank you, he said quietly, for staying, for fighting, for not running when things got bad. Where would I run to? Anywhere. You could have taken the boys and hidden, could have waited it out and left in the morning. No one would have blamed you. I would have blamed me. I squeezed his hand. Besides, someone had to watch your back. You're terrible at it yourself. Almost a smile. Almost. The sun was rising fully now, painting the snow gold and pink. A new day. A new beginning, maybe. Or just another day in a string of hard days survived through stubbornness and luck. Either way, we'd face it together. All of us. Because somewhere in the chaos and gunfire and fear, we'd stopped being strangers playing house and become something real. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. And sometimes that was enough. The nightmares started 3 days after the attack. Lucas would wake screaming, calling for his mother, for me, for anyone who could chase away the men with guns who lived behind his eyelids now. The first night, Daniel got to him before I did. I heard his heavy footsteps in the hall, heard his deep voice trying to soothe, trying to comfort, heard him fail. By the time I reached the doorway, Lucas was sobbing into Daniel's shoulder while Daniel sat there stiff and helpless, patting the boy's back like he was afraid he might break him. "Let me," I said softly. Daniel looked up, relief and something like shame crossing his face. He handed Lucas over without argument. I carried the boy to the rocking chair by the window, the one Elizabeth must have used for the same purpose, held him close and rocked, humming nonsense tunes until his breathing evened out and the tears stopped. "They're going to come back," Lucas whispered against my neck. "No, baby, they're in jail. They can't come back." "But what if there's more of them? What if they send more bad men? Then your papa and I will stop them too." I kissed the top of his head. "We'll always stop them. That's what parents do." The word slipped out before I could catch it. Parents. Not caregivers, not guardians. Parents. Lucas didn't seem to notice. He just burrowed closer, his small hand fisting in my nightgown. "Don't leave," he murmured, already half asleep again. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "I promise." When I looked up, Daniel was still in the doorway, watching. His expression was unreadable in the dim light, but something in his posture had shifted, softened. "He needs you," he said quietly. "He needs both of us." "He asked for you first." There was no bitterness in the words, just statement of fact, but I heard the hurt underneath anyway. "Daniel, it's fine. I'm glad he has you." He turned to leave, then paused. "I never thanked you properly for what you did during the attack." "You don't need to." "I do. You saved my life. You protected our sons." The possessive pronoun hung in the air between us. Our sons, not my sons. "I won't forget that." He left before I could respond, and I was alone with Lucas, rocking in a dead woman's chair, wondering when exactly this arrangement had stopped feeling like pretend. The second night, Noah woke with nightmares. He didn't scream like Lucas, just sat bolt upright in bed, breathing hard, his face pale in the moonlight. I heard him from across the hall and went to him. "Can't sleep?" I asked from the doorway. He shook his head, tried to look brave, and failed. "Want to talk about it?" I keep seeing him, the man in our room, keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't come up through that door when I did. "But you did come up, and you were very brave." "I was scared." His voice cracked. "I was so scared I thought I might throw up. But I heard him walking around and I knew Lucas was down there and Papa was fighting downstairs and you were—" He stopped, swallowed hard. I couldn't just hide anymore, even though I wanted to. I sat on the edge of his bed. "You know what the difference is between bravery and stupidity?" "What?" "Timing. What you did was brave because it was the right moment, but if you'd tried it 5 minutes earlier or later, it would have been stupid. The trick is knowing which is which." Noah considered this. "How do you know?" "You don't. Not always. Sometimes you just have to trust your gut and hope you're right." I smoothed his blanket, a gesture that felt natural now. "But you were right, and I'm proud of you." "Grace?" "Yeah?" "Are you going to stay? Really stay? Not just until Margaret comes or until Papa doesn't need you anymore, but stay." The question was so raw, so hopeful, It made my chest ache. Do you want me to stay? I didn't at first. I thought if I was mean enough, you'd leave and Papa wouldn't try to replace Mama anymore. His eyes were wet. But you're not replacing her, you're just you. And I like you, even when I didn't want to. I like you too, even when you're difficult. I'm not difficult. You're extremely difficult, stubborn as a mule and twice as ornery. He almost smiled. Takes one to know one. That's fair. I stood, tucked his blanket tighter around him. Try to sleep. And if you can't, come find me. I'll be up anyway. Because of your nightmares? I paused. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams, the ones where I didn't fire fast enough, where Daniel died, where the boys were taken, where I failed at the one thing that mattered. Yeah, I admitted, because of my nightmares. Maybe we could both not sleep together. In the kitchen, with hot chocolate. It was such a simple suggestion, such a child's solution to adult problems. But maybe that's exactly what we needed. That sounds perfect, I said. We made hot chocolate at 2 a.m, trying to be quiet and failing. The clatter of pots woke Lucas, who appeared like a small ghost in his nightshirt. Then Rosa showed up, because apparently she had a sixth sense for when her kitchen was being used without permission. ¿Qué es esto? She demanded, then took in the scene. Me and 2 boys in our nightclothes trying to make cocoa in the middle of the night, and her expression softened. Ah, bad dreams, see? Very bad dreams, Lucas confirmed. Then you make room for Rosa. I do not sleep well after violence, either. She bustled around, improving our mediocre hot chocolate into something actually drinkable, adding cinnamon and a touch of vanilla. When I was a girl in Sonora, there were bandits. They came to our village many times. My mama, she would make us chocolate after, to remind us that sweet things still exist, even when the world is bitter. We sat around the kitchen table, drinking cocoa and not talking about the things that haunted us. Sometimes that's all you can do. Sit together in the dark and remember that you're not alone in it. The door to Daniel's room opened. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, half-dressed, his hair standing on end, took in the gathering around his table. Is this a private nightmare party or can anyone join? He asked. Everyone's invited, Noah said, but you have to share your bad dream. I don't remember my dreams. That's a lie, I said. I can hear you pacing at night. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he sat down anyway. Rosa poured him cocoa without asking if he wanted it. He took it, wrapped his large hands around the cup like he was trying to absorb its warmth. I dream that I'm too late, he said finally, his voice rough. That I get to the kitchen and you're already dead, both of you, and the boys are gone. He stared into his cup. I dream that I failed. Again. Lucas reached across the table, put his small hand on Daniel's arm. But you didn't fail. We're all okay. This time. Then we'll be okay next time too, Noah said with the absolute certainty of childhood. Because we're tougher now. We know what to do. Daniel looked at his sons, really looked at them. And something in his face cracked open. When did you 2 get so brave? We learned it from you, Noah said simply. And from Grace, Lucas added. She's scary when she's protecting people. I'm not scary, I protested. You shot a man, Noah pointed out. That's pretty scary. I've shot many men, Rosa said casually, and we all turned to stare at her. She shrugged. What? You think I survived 70 years by being delicate? There were bandits. I had a rifle. Sometimes these things happen. Despite everything, the nightmares, the fear, the weight of what we'd done, we laughed. It wasn't the wild laughter of hysteria, but the real kind. The kind that comes when you're with people who understand you and love you anyway. And somewhere in that laughter, surrounded by my accidental family in the middle of the night, I realized I didn't want to leave. Not when Margaret came, not ever. This was home now. These people were mine. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. Daniel caught my eye across the table. Something passed between us. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Like he was thinking the same thing and didn't quite know what to do about it either. The days that followed were strange. We rebuilt the broken parts of the house. New windows, a new door, fresh paint over the bullet holes. But the real rebuilding was happening in smaller, quieter ways. Daniel started joining us for lessons in the afternoon, sitting in the back and pretending to read the newspaper while actually listening to Noah recite his multiplication tables. When Lucas struggled with a word, Daniel would help without being asked, his deep voice gentle in a way I'd never heard before. The boys started gravitating toward him more. Not away from me, but toward him as well. Like they were finally remembering he was their father, not just the stern figure who ran the ranch. And Daniel let them. Let Lucas climb into his lap during dinner. Let Noah pepper him with questions about the cattle and the land. Let himself be a father instead of just a provider. Rosa noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "He's thawing," she said one afternoon as we kneaded bread together. "Like ice in spring, slow but inevitable. Or he's just tired of fighting it." "Is the same thing, no?" She punched down her dough with more force than necessary. "For 8 months, that man has been frozen. Now he melts. This is good. What if he freezes again? Then you melt him again. This is how marriage works, back and forth, freeze and thaw, until eventually you find the right temperature." She gave me a knowing look. "But I think maybe he will not freeze so easy now, not after seeing what he almost lost." I wanted to ask what she meant, but Daniel chose that moment to come in from the barn, stamping snow off his boots. "Grace," he said, "can I talk to you? Alone?" My stomach flipped. The last time he'd wanted to talk alone, he'd been proposing a marriage of convenience. What did he want now? We went to his office, a small room off the parlor that I'd barely entered since arriving. It was sparse and functional, like everything else about Daniel. A desk, a chair, a filing cabinet. No personal touches except a photograph on the desk of a woman I assumed was Elizabeth, holding a baby Noah. Daniel saw me looking at it. "I should probably put that away." "Why?" "Because it's not fair to you, living in her shadow." "I'm not living in her shadow. I'm living in your house, with your sons, as your wife. That's different." I picked up the photograph, studied the woman in it. She was pretty in a wholesome way, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "She looks happy." She was, most of the time. Daniel took the photograph from me, set it back down carefully. "I loved her. I need you to know that. What we had was real." "I know. But she's gone. And I'm still here, and so are you." He turned to face me fully. "Grace, I asked you here because I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay? Do you want to leave? If I gave you enough money to start over somewhere else, somewhere safe, would you go?" The question knocked the air from my lungs. "What? Why would you?" "Because this isn't what you signed up for. You came here desperate, with no other options. I took advantage of that. I put you in danger." His hands clenched at his sides. "You could have died because of my problems, my debts, my enemies. That's not fair. Life's not fair. We've established this." "I'm serious, Grace." "So am I." I crossed my arms. "You think I stayed during that attack because I had no choice? You think I fought beside you because there was nowhere else to go? I think you're loyal and brave and you did what had to be done. I did what I wanted to do. There's a difference." I stepped closer. "Daniel, I could have run, could have taken the boys and hidden, like you said, could have waited it out and left the next morning with enough money from you to start over. But I didn't." "Why not?" "Because this is my home. Those boys are my sons. And you—" I stopped, surprised by my own honesty. "You're my husband, not on paper, not in some legal arrangement, but actually, really." He stared at me. "Grace, I'm not asking you to love me. I know that's not part of the deal, but I need you to know I'm not staying out of obligation or desperation. I'm staying because I choose to. Every day I choose this." The silence stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. Then Daniel did something completely unexpected. He pulled me into his arms, not the careful performative embrace from before, but a real one. Tight and desperate and clumsy. "I don't know how to do this," he said roughly, his face buried in my hair. "I don't know how to let someone in again. Every time I think about it, I remember losing Elizabeth and I can't. So don't think about it. Just do it. One day at a time, like we've been doing." "What if I fail? What if I let you down?" "Then you fail, and we figure it out together." I pulled back enough to look at him. "Daniel, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be here. Present. That's all I'm asking." He studied my face like he was seeing it for the first time. "I care about you. I don't know if it's love yet, but it's something real. That's enough for me." "Is it? Really?" "Really." I smiled. Besides, love's overrated. I'll take real partnership over romantic nonsense any day. He almost laughed. You're a terrible romantic. And you're emotionally stunted. We're perfect for each other. This time he did laugh. A real one. Rusty and surprised. Then he kissed me. It wasn't smooth or practiced. It was awkward and tentative. Two people who barely knew how to be together trying to figure it out on the fly. But it was honest. And it was ours. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against mine. I'm going to mess this up, he warned. Probably. I'll mess it up too. We'll take turns. And when I freeze again, when I retreat, I'll drag you back out, kicking and screaming if I have to. I touched his face, feeling the rough stubble under my fingers. You're stuck with me now, Cross. Might as well accept it. I can think of worse fates. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Give me time. I'm out of practice. I'm out. We stood there in his office, holding each other like teenagers, until Lucas's voice floated in from the kitchen. Are they kissing? I bet they're kissing. Shut up, Lucas, Noah hissed. You're gonna ruin it, Daniel groaned. We have no privacy in this house. Welcome to family life. Is this what I signed up for? No, it's better. I kissed him again, quick and light. Now come on, Rosa's making stew, and if we don't get out there, the boys will eat all the bread. We emerged from the office to find Noah and Lucas trying very hard to look like they hadn't been eavesdropping. Rosa just smiled and ladled stew into bowls. Dinner that night was loud and chaotic. Lucas telling stories that went nowhere, Noah correcting him, Daniel actually engaging instead of just grunting responses. I watched my family interact and felt something warm settle in my chest. This was real. This was mine. After the boys were in bed, Daniel and I sat on the porch despite the cold. He'd brought out blankets, and we huddled together under them, watching the stars. Margaret's coming in 6 weeks, he said. I know. She's going to ask questions, want to verify this is a real marriage. It is a real marriage. Is it? He looked at me. Grace, I moved back to the main house today. While you were teaching, put my things in our room. Our room? Not Elizabeth's room. Not the master bedroom. Ours. Okay, I said carefully. I'm saying I want this to be real. Not just for Margaret. Not just for the boys. For us. He took my hand. I'm saying I want to try. Actually try. To be a husband, not just a name on a marriage certificate. And if it doesn't work, then at least we tried. That's more than most people can say. He squeezed my hand. But I think it will work. I think maybe we've been making it work all along without realizing it. He was right. Somewhere between the desperate bargain in the snow and the gunfight in our kitchen, we'd built something real. Not the fairy tale romance of storybooks, but something stronger. Partnership forged in fire. Trust built through adversity. Then I guess we're really doing this, I said. I guess we are. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice quiet. I'm still going to mess this up sometimes. I'm going to retreat and shut down and be impossible. I know. And you're going to be stubborn and argumentative and refuse to let me get away with it. Absolutely. Good. He pulled me closer. I wouldn't want it any other way. That night, for the first time since arriving at the Cross Ranch, I slept in the master bedroom with Daniel beside me. Not touching, not yet. We were still too new at this, too uncertain, but present, together. And when Lucas crept in around midnight with nightmares, we made room for him between us. Then Noah appeared, not wanting to be left out. We ended up in a pile of blankets and limbs, all 4 of us breathing in rhythm. A real family, messy and imperfect and absolutely right. The weeks before Margaret's visit passed in a blur of preparation. We fixed everything that could be fixed, painted everything that could be painted, made the ranch look as prosperous and well-run as possible. But more than that, we practiced being a family. It wasn't hard. We'd been doing it already, just without acknowledging it. Daniel taught Noah to mend fences and check cattle. I taught Lucas to read simple sentences. We had dinner together every night, all 4 of us, talking about our days. Daniel and I developed routines, morning coffee together before the boys woke up, evening walks after they went to bed. We kissed sometimes, held hands, shared a bed, and slowly, carefully, began to share ourselves. It wasn't perfect. Daniel still retreated sometimes, overwhelmed by emotions he didn't know how to process. I still snapped when I was tired or scared. The boys still fought over stupid things and had nightmares. But we were real, and real was better than perfect. When Margaret finally arrived, stepping off the train in a cloud of expensive perfume and Eastern propriety, I felt ready. We all did. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with Elizabeth's eyes but a harder set to her mouth. She looked at the ranch with obvious skepticism, at Daniel with thinly veiled disapproval, and at me like I was a specimen to be studied. "So you're the new Mrs. Cross," she said, extending a gloved hand. "Grace," I said, shaking it firmly, "it's nice to finally meet you." "Is it?" She looked past me to where Daniel stood with the boys. "Those are Elizabeth's children. I hope you remember that." "I do. Every day." I met her gaze steadily. "But I'm their mother now, and I love them like they're my own." Something flickered in Margaret's expression. Not approval exactly, but maybe respect. "We'll see," she said. We would. And I wasn't worried, because whatever else we were, whatever we'd started as, we were a family now. And families protect each other. Always. Margaret stayed for 3 weeks, and they were the longest 3 weeks of my life. She watched everything. The way Daniel and I moved around each other in the kitchen, how the boys responded when I called them for lessons, whether Daniel touched me casually, the way a real husband would. She asked pointed questions about our courtship, our wedding night, our plans for the future. She examined the ranch's books, interviewed Rosa, even questioned Tom about the household dynamics. And through it all, we had to maintain the fiction that we'd fallen in love naturally, that this was a real marriage built on affection and not desperation. The irony was that it had become real, just not in the timeline Margaret expected. "Tell me again how you met," she said one afternoon over tea. The boys were outside with Daniel, giving us privacy, giving Margaret time to interrogate me without witnesses, through correspondence. I was teaching in Cedar Falls, and Daniel wrote seeking someone to help with the household and the boys' education. "And you fell in love through letters?" Her tone suggested she found this unlikely. Not exactly. We were practical in our correspondence, but when I arrived and met him in person, I paused, choosing my words carefully. I saw a man who was drowning, but too proud to ask for help. A man who loved his sons, but didn't know how to show it. A man who needed someone who wouldn't give up on him. That's not love. That's pity. Maybe it started that way. But pity doesn't make you stand beside someone when outlaws break down your door. Pity doesn't make you fight for someone's life like it's your own. I met her eyes. I chose Daniel, and I keep choosing him every single day. Margaret studied me over the rim of her teacup. Elizabeth chose him too. She loved him desperately. Then she died and he fell apart. I know. Do you? Do you know what it was like, watching my sister waste away while he stood helpless? Watching those boys lose their mother because Daniel couldn't afford better doctors, better medicine. Her voice turned sharp. He failed her. What makes you think he won't fail you too? The accusation hung between us, ugly and raw. He didn't fail her, I said quietly. Cholera doesn't care how much you love someone. It doesn't care how hard you try. Elizabeth died because that's what disease does. It kills, not because Daniel didn't love her enough or try hard enough. He should have done more. He did everything he could, and when it wasn't enough, he kept their sons alive, kept this ranch running, kept going even when it would have been easier to give up. I set down my teacup. That's not failure, Margaret. That's survival. And it's a lot harder than you think. Her expression flickered, surprise maybe, or recognition. You defend him. He's my husband. Of course I defend him. Even knowing you're his second choice, that he settled for you because Elizabeth was gone. The words were meant to wound. And they did, a little. But I'd spent enough time with Daniel to know the truth. I'm not his second choice, I said. I'm his second chance. There's a difference. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer, someone more desperate to please me, to prove herself worthy. She actually smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Elizabeth was soft, kind, and gentle, and everything a wife should be. You're harder. I've had to be. Yes, I suppose you have. She stood, smoothing her skirts. Walk with me. I want to see the rest of the property. We walked in silence for a while, our boots crunching in the late spring snow. Margaret examined everything, the repaired fences, the barn, the chicken coop. Looking for cracks in the facade, I supposed. Looking for proof this was all a sham. When we reached the small cemetery plot where Elizabeth was buried, Margaret stopped, stared at the simple headstone with her sister's name carved into it. Do the boys visit her? She asked. Sometimes. When they're ready. I don't force it. And you? Do you visit? Yes. Why? I considered lying, then decided Margaret deserved honesty. Because she's part of this family. Because the boys need to remember her. And because, I paused, because I wanted to tell her I'd take care of them. Her husband, her sons, that I'd protect what she left behind. Margaret turned to look at me, her eyes suspiciously bright. You talk to my dead sister. Sometimes. Is that strange? Probably. She looked back at the grave. What does she say back? Nothing, but I like to think she'd approve of me being here, of Daniel trying again. I stepped closer to the headstone, touched it gently. I'm not trying to replace her. I couldn't if I tried, but I can honor her by loving what she loved. And do you love them? More than I thought possible. Margaret was quiet for so long I thought she might not respond. Then she said, Elizabeth wrote to me before she died. Near the end, when she knew she wouldn't recover, she made me promise to look after Daniel and the boys, to make sure they didn't fall apart without her. So you demanded he remarry. I demanded he find help. I knew he couldn't do it alone. He's too stubborn, too proud. He'd work himself to death trying to be both mother and father, and the boys would suffer for it. She brushed snow off the headstone with gentle fingers. I thought I'd have to force some desperate woman on him. Someone who'd take the money and do the minimum. I never expected, what? Someone who'd actually fight for them. Someone who'd put herself between my nephews and danger without hesitation. Margaret looked at me. The sheriff wrote to me about the attack, told me everything, how you handled yourself. I did what anyone would do. No. You did what a mother would do, what Elizabeth would have done if she'd had the chance. Margaret's voice cracked slightly. She'd be grateful that they have you. The words broke something open in my chest. I'd been so focused on proving myself to Margaret, on maintaining the facade, that I hadn't realized how much I needed her approval. Not for the marriage, not for the money, but for this. Permission to love Elizabeth's family without guilt. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. I'm still going to make this difficult. But she smiled when she said it, and for the first time I saw the family resemblance, not in her features, but in her fierce protectiveness. Those boys deserve the best. So does Daniel, even if he doesn't think so. I know. Then prove it. Not to me, to them. Every day, for the rest of your life. Can you do that? I can try. Trying's not good enough. Then yes, I can do it. I will do it. I met her eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Margaret. This is my family now, my home, and I'll defend it with everything I have. She nodded, satisfied. Good. Then I'll approve the arrangement. Just like that? Just like that. She started walking back toward the house. Though I reserve the right to visit annually and make everyone miserable with my scrutiny, I wouldn't expect anything less. That night, after Margaret had retired to the guest room and the boys were asleep, Daniel found me on the porch. He'd taken to joining me there most evenings, sitting close enough that our shoulders touched, not saying much but being present. Margaret cornered me today, he said, asked about our wedding night. I choked on my coffee. What did you tell her? The truth, that it was awkward and terrifying and neither of us knew what we were doing. He smiled slightly. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Because it sounds real. It is real, just not the wedding night she was asking about. He took my hand, laced our fingers together. Grace, I've been thinking. That's dangerous. I'm serious. I've been thinking about what we are, what we've become. And what's that? Partners, real ones. Not the arrangement we started with, but something better. He turned to face me. I want to do this right, the way we should have done it from the beginning. Daniel, we're already married. I know, but we got married out of desperation. I want to marry you again. This time because I choose you, because I love you. The words stopped my breath. Love. He'd said it so casually, like it was a fact instead of a revelation. You love me? I managed. I think I have for a while now. I just didn't recognize it. He cupped my face in his rough hands. You're stubborn and argumentative, and you challenge me at every turn. You make me want to be better than I am. You make me want to try, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's not very romantic. I'm not very romantic. You knew that when you married me. Fair point. I leaned into his touch. For the record, I love you too. Your emotional constipation and all. My what? You heard me. You're terrible at feelings, but you're trying, and that's what matters. I kissed him, soft and slow. So yes, I'll marry you again, properly this time. When? Whenever you want, though Margaret might want to attend and she's leaving next week. Then next week it is. He pulled me close. I'll do it right this time. Flowers, music, the whole town if you want. I don't need the whole town. I just need you and the boys and the people who matter. Then that's what you'll have. We sat together in the dark, planning a wedding that would mean everything and change nothing, because we were already married in all the ways that mattered, in our daily choices, in our commitment to each other, in the family we'd built from broken pieces. The ceremony happened on a Sunday afternoon in late spring. The snow had finally melted and the first wildflowers were pushing through the earth. We held it outside, in front of the house, with the mountains as our backdrop. Rosa had spent days preparing food. The boys had picked flowers and tried to make the ranch look festive. Tom and the other hands had cleaned up the yard, fixed the fence, made everything presentable. And Margaret had invited half the town. I thought you didn't want a crowd, Daniel muttered as people filed into the yard. I didn't think Margaret would issue a general invitation. My sister was beloved here, Margaret said, overhearing us. These people remember her. They deserve to see that Daniel's moving forward, that the boys have a good home, that this family isn't broken anymore. She was right, even if I wished she'd consulted us first. The town had been curious about me since I'd arrived. The mysterious stranger who'd married Daniel Cross overnight. Now they'd get to see us as we really were. The Reverend was the same one who'd married us the first time. He looked much happier about it now, probably because we actually seemed like we wanted to be there. We are gathered here today, and this time I'm saying the whole thing, Daniel, so don't even try to interrupt. To witness the union of Daniel Cross and Grace Cross in holy matrimony. We're already married, someone in the crowd muttered. They're doing it again, someone else whispered back. Romantic, isn't it? Or strange. Daniel's hand tightened on mine, and I suppressed a smile. Let them think what they wanted. We knew the truth. The Reverend went through the traditional vows this time. Love, honor, cherish, sickness, and health, richer and poorer. All the promises we'd skipped the first time because they'd felt like lies. Now they felt like truth. When it came time for Daniel to say, I do, he didn't rush through it. Instead, he looked at me like I was the only person in the world and said, I do, always. And when it was my turn, I said, I do, for as long as we both shall live. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you again husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss your bride. And this time you're doing it. Daniel didn't need to be told twice. He pulled me close and kissed me in front of everyone. Not a chaste peck, but a real kiss. The kind that made the crowd whistle and the boys groan in embarrassment. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he whispered, Thank you. For what? For choosing this. For choosing us. Always, I whispered back. The celebration that followed was loud and chaotic. People drank Rosa's punch and ate her food and danced to music from a fiddle player someone had brought. The boys ran wild with other children, finally acting their age instead of carrying the weight of the world. And Daniel and I danced, badly, because neither of us really knew how, but we tried anyway. We stumbled and stepped on each other's toes and laughed, and it was perfect in its imperfection. Margaret watched from the sidelines, a glass of punch in hand, looking satisfied. You did well, she told me later. Better than I expected. High praise from you? Don't let it go to your head. But she was smiling. I'm leaving tomorrow, back east to settle Elizabeth's remaining affairs. But I'll return next spring, as promised. To make sure we're still doing right by the boys? To visit my nephews and see my sister's family thriving. She squeezed my hand. You're good for them, Grace. For all of them. Don't forget that when things get hard. They'll get hard? Marriage always does. Children grow and change and challenge you. Ranches fail and succeed and fail again. Life happens. She looked at Daniel, who was currently being climbed by both boys like a tree. But I think you're strong enough to weather it, both of you. She left the next morning, and with her departure, the last pretense fell away. We weren't performing anymore. We were just living. The months that followed were good. Not perfect, but good. The ranch started to turn a profit again. Daniel hired back some hands, expanded the herd. I continued teaching the boys, adding reading and science to their lessons. We fell into routines that felt natural, comfortable. Noah grew taller and more confident. He still had nightmares sometimes, but less frequently. He'd started talking about wanting to run the ranch someday, to take over from his father when he was old enough. Lucas lost his first tooth and learned to write his name. He called me Mama now, without hesitation, and the word made my heart swell every time. And Daniel opened up in ways I'd never expected. He talked about Elizabeth sometimes, sharing memories without pain. He told me about his own childhood, about losing his parents young, about building this ranch from nothing. He wasn't perfect. He still retreated sometimes when emotions got too heavy, still struggled to express what he felt. But he tried. Every day he tried. And that was all I'd ever asked for. One night, about a year after our second wedding, I woke to find Daniel's side of the bed empty. I found him on the porch, staring out at the dark landscape. "Can't sleep?" I asked, joining him. "Just thinking." "About?" "About how different things are now. How different I am." He pulled me close. A year ago, I was convinced I'd never feel anything again, that I'd just exist, going through the motions until I died. And now I feel everything. It's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know what to do with it half the time. He kissed the top of my head. But I'm glad. Even when it hurts, I'm glad to feel it. That's growth. That's you. You did this. You broke through all my walls and made me human again. You were always human. You just forgot for a while. We stood there in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds. Then Daniel said, "I want more children." I pulled back to look at him. "What?" "With you. I want more children with you. If you want them too." My throat tightened. I thought, with Elizabeth dying in childbirth, I thought you'd never want to risk it again. I didn't think I would. But that was fear talking, and I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. He cupped my face. "I want a family with you, Grace. A big, messy, chaotic family. I want our children running around this ranch alongside Noah and Lucas. I want us to be so full of life that we can barely contain it." "That's a lot of wanting." "Is it too much?" "No." I kissed him. "It's exactly right." So we tried. And months later, when I felt the first flutter of life inside me, I knew everything had come full circle. I'd arrived at this ranch dying, desperate, with nothing to my name. Now I was alive in every sense of the word, carrying new life, surrounded by love I'd never thought I'd have. The pregnancy wasn't easy. I was sick for months, and Daniel hovered like a nervous hen. The boys were excited and terrified in equal measure. Noah asked if I was going to die like his mama. Lucas wanted to know if the baby would like him. "I'm not going to die," I told Noah firmly. "Women have babies all the time and survive. I'll be fine." "Promise?" "I promise to fight like hell to stay alive." "That good enough?" He nodded, satisfied with that level of honesty. When my daughter was born on a cold December night, with Rosa assisting and Daniel pacing holes in the floor downstairs, I understood why Elizabeth had risked everything to bring new life into the world. The pain was terrible, yes. The fear was real. But the moment they placed my daughter in my arms, none of it mattered. She was tiny and red and screaming her lungs out, and she was absolutely perfect. Daniel came in hesitantly, like he was afraid to hope. When he saw us both alive, saw his daughter for the first time, he broke down completely. Just sat beside the bed and cried into his hands while I held our baby, and Rosa patted his shoulder. "You're okay," he kept saying. "You're both okay. We're better than okay. We're perfect." The boys met their sister the next morning. Lucas was enthralled, touching her tiny fingers with wonder. Noah was more cautious, but I saw the love in his eyes. "What's her name?" Noah asked. Daniel and I had discussed this. We'd agreed on it weeks ago, though we'd told no one. Elizabeth Grace, I said, after both her mothers. Noah's eyes went wide. Both? Your first mother gave you life. I'm trying to give you a good one. You get to carry both those legacies forward. I touched his cheek. We all do. He understood. I could see it in his face, the acceptance, the healing. He'd carry Elizabeth's memory forward, but he'd also move into the future. Both things could be true. Margaret visited that spring, as promised. She met baby Elizabeth and cried over her niece, seeing her sister's features in the tiny face. She saw the ranch thriving, the boys happy, Daniel and me building something real. You've done well, she said before leaving. Better than well. You've built something Elizabeth would be proud of. We all did, together. Yes, together. She hugged me tight. I'm glad my sister's family found you, Grace. I'm glad you found them. Years passed. Elizabeth grew from baby to toddler to wild child, running after her brothers and refusing to be left behind. We had another child, a son we named Thomas, after Tom, who'd stood by Daniel through everything. Then another daughter, Clara, who had my stubborn streak and Daniel's determination. The ranch prospered. Noah took on more responsibility, learning the business from his father. Lucas discovered a love for horses and spent hours training them. Our younger children brought chaos and joy in equal measure. And Daniel and I grew together, not perfectly, never perfectly, but genuinely. We fought sometimes. We struggled. There were hard years when crops failed or cattle died or money was tight. There were nights when grief for Elizabeth would hit Daniel out of nowhere, and I'd hold him while he cried for the wife he'd lost. But there were more good times than bad. More laughter than tears. More love than either of us thought we deserved. On our 10th anniversary, or 12th, depending on which wedding you counted from, Daniel found me in the garden I'd planted where Elizabeth's had been. I'd kept some of her original plants, added my own, created something that honored the past while growing toward the future. Still worth it? He asked, sitting beside me on the bench. Worth what? Marrying a stranger in a snowstorm, taking on 2 broken boys and a failing ranch, nearly getting killed by outlaws, all of it. I looked at our house, no longer cold and empty, but full of children's laughter and life. Looked at the land we'd built into something sustainable. Looked at the man beside me, no longer made of ice, but warm and present and mine. Every single second of it, I said. No regrets? Only one. He tensed. What? That I didn't kiss you the first night we got married. Would have saved us a lot of time. He laughed, easy and genuine, the kind of laugh that had taken years to earn. We had time. We had all the time we needed. And we still do. Yeah, we do. We sat together in the garden, surrounded by the life we'd built from desperation and choice and sheer stubbornness. Around us, our children played. Inside the house, Rosa was probably cooking something wonderful and muttering about stubborn men. The ranch hummed with activity and purpose. This was what I'd fought for. What we'd all fought for. Not perfection, not a fairy tale. Just real life, with all its messiness and beauty and struggle. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Because here's what I learned in those years on the Cross Ranch. What I'd tell anyone who'd listen. Family isn't about blood or circumstances or how you start. It's about who you choose and who chooses you back. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Love isn't what saves you. It's what you build after you save yourself. It's the choice you make every morning to stay, to try, to keep fighting for the people who matter. And home isn't a place. It's the people who see you at your worst and love you anyway, who fight beside you when danger comes, who grow with you through all the seasons of life. I'd come to Montana dying, with nothing to my name but desperation. I'd found a man who needed saving as much as I did. Together, we'd built something neither of us could have built alone. And maybe that's the real lesson, that we're all broken in our own ways, all desperately trying to survive, all looking for something to hold on to. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we find other broken people willing to be broken together, willing to help each other heal. That's what family is. That's what love is. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of people worth struggling for. Daniel squeezed my hand, pulling me from my thoughts. Where'd you go? He asked. Nowhere. I'm right here, right where I'm supposed to be. Good, because dinner's almost ready, and if we're late, the kids will eat all the good parts. The good parts. Rosa made pie. There's already a war brewing over who gets the biggest slice. Then we better get in there before someone loses an eye. We stood, brushing dirt from our clothes, and walked toward the house together. Toward the noise and chaos and love waiting inside. Toward the life we'd chosen, the family we'd forged from impossible circumstances. Behind us, the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the same sky that had witnessed my arrival in a blizzard, desperate and alone. The same sky that had seen us fight and survive and grow. The same sky that would watch over our children and grandchildren long after Daniel and I were gone. But that was far in the future. For now, there was dinner to eat and children to wrangle and a husband to love. For now, there was life to live. And I intended to live every second of it, together, always together.